Prime Minister and the President of the United States, for example, have begun defining a new economic and security relationship.
The speech could have essentially been written by a Conservative government. Do you agree?
Well, I would have written a different speech.
King Charles III made history this week as he delivered the speech from the throne in Canada's Senate. It's the first time a reigning monarch has done so since Queen Elizabeth II nearly 5 decades ago. But make no mistake, this wasn't just about pomp and protocol. It was political, it was strategic, and it was very Canadian. His Majesty's visit came less than a month after Mark Carney, yes, the former Bank of Canada and Bank of England governor, was elected Prime Minister after calling snap elections 5 months early. And Carney's first big move, inviting the King himself instead of the Governor General to open Parliament. According to royal watchers and Canadian analysts, this was a deliberate signal. A signal that Canada was reclaiming attention on the global stage, especially with tensions running high across the border. US President Donald Trump has called Canada the 51st state, slapped tariffs back on key exports, and referred to former PM Justin Trudeau as Governor Trudeau. So yes, this throne speech wasn't just ceremonial, it was a soft power flex. In Ottawa's Land Zone Park, crowds surged to meet King Charles and Queen Camilla. Selfies, handshakes and royal cheers filled the air. And in Radio Hall, a spontaneous God Save the King rang out as Charles planted a ceremonial tree. Inside the Senate, though, was where history truly unfolded. The King's speech was clear, it was pointed, and it was decidedly modern. According to analysts, Charles delivered a far more direct address than Queen Elizabeth ever did. No need to decode this one. This was a king, unafraid to speak plainly. But not all Canadians were cheering.
We join today in thanking His Majesty for coming to Canada and delivering the throne speech, reinforcing our ancient British liberties, a parliamentary system that goes back 800 years, a system that has served Canada well and has been the foundation of what I love to call the Canadian promise, that anyone who works hard gets a great life in a nice, affordable house on a safe street. That's the promise that we as Conservatives ran to restore, and it's why we were able to get 2 million more votes and 24 more seats. We inspired a lot of people that we would fight for that Canadian promise and bring forward that hope. And we were looking for that promise and that hope in this speech today. We did see a lot of the right slogans and political talking points, but no clear plans to get it done. One slogan dealt with controlling government spending, but there were no specific savings to roll back the morbidly obese Liberal government's costs. We saw promises about getting things built, but no mention of oil and gas or pipelines. Pipelines are, of course, the thing we most need to build. Didn't get one mention. Nor did they mention getting rid of the anti-energy laws that have kept our resources in the ground. C-69, the no development law. C-48, the shipping ban. The energy cap. The electric vehicle mandate. All of these things were left out of the speech altogether. No specific plans to get anything done, even though, as the Prime Minister has said, we are in a crisis to break our dependence on the American economy. They mentioned crime, but refused to say that they would repeal the Liberal catch and release bail law, C-75, or the house arrest law, laws that have allowed rampant chaos and crime to overtake our once tranquil streets. No mention of overcoming the opioid crisis and replacing tax-funded drugs and legalization with treatment and recovery. No mention of real plans to get taxes under control by reducing the cost of government. So we're here to turn the government's talking points into real plans. We pledge to work with the government to repeal the anti-energy law, C-69, repeal the energy cap, the electric vehicle mandate, the offshore shipping ban. Let's get our pipelines building. Let's get our goods to markets other than the United States. We're here to propose cuts to bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, and corporate welfare so that we can bring down taxes, debt, and inflation. Let's repeal the catch and release laws so that we can restore safety to our streets. Let's invest in treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free. In other words, let's replace the talking points with real plans to get it done. That is what Conservatives pledged to do. That is what Canadians voted for us to fight for, and that is what we will deliver.
A lot of this, having the king, whatever, was meant to assert something about Canada to the world. Did you take that away from the speech? And what do you think the impact of all that messaging is on how people perceive us, including but not limited to Donald Trump?
You know, it's been a centuries-old debate between Canada's primary relationship with the Crown and with our closest neighbour. We saw that as far back as John A. Macdonald. We saw it again in the free trade debate. I think it is important to reinforce the British traditions of our parliamentary democracy and to reassert that we have a centuries-old friendship with the United Kingdom. Those traditions survive today. The place behind me right now is following many of the same rules that were scribbled on parchment hundreds of years ago in Britain. And all, of course, this was the result of the Great Magna Carta, an 800-year-old tradition that basically created liberty under the law. So I think it's important that the world recognize that we have those ancient traditions and that the Americans recognize that we are an independent and free country that will make its own decisions.
At Land Zone, some chanted, "Not our king," peacefully, respectfully, and in the words of Canadian observers, what could be more representative of Canada than two opposing views, existing side by side without chaos? There was also a movement that raised eyebrows. Former Governor General Michael Jain physically guided the king by the hand to meet indigenous leaders. That breaks royal protocol. But according to royal watchers, it also highlights the evolving nature of Canada's relationship with the monarchy. So, what does all of this mean? Will this change how Canadians feel about the monarchy? Probably not. Analysts say the country's comfortable indifference towards the crown is likely to remain. But what has changed is the tone. Mark Carney's government used the visit to make a statement. A statement about diplomacy, about leadership, about a Canada ready to stand tall, even as global politics shift around it. And in King Charles' own words, as he closed the throne's speech,
and reminds us the true north is indeed strong and free.
This is Gauri Joshi for the Economic Times. Stay tuned and keep watching to know everything that's going on in US, Canada, and the world.